They say 3 days. The man on the loudspeaker says 3 days. He says it clearly. He says, "Citizens of Pripyat, in connection with the accident at the Chernobyl nuclear power station, a temporary evacuation of the city is being carried out. Please take with you documents, necessary items, and food for 3 days. 3 days. You stand in your kitchen with the loudspeaker coming through the window and you look at the suitcase you pulled from the top of the wardrobe 20 minutes ago, before the announcement, because something in the morning, the way the street looked, the number of militia cars, the knocking on doors, told you something was happening even before anyone said what it was. 3 days. You think, what do you take for 3 days? You take clothes, you take documents, you take the money from the drawer in the kitchen. You take your daughter's bear, the brown one, the one she will not sleep without. You take the photographs from the shelf. You take them automatically, without deciding to take them, your hand going to them before your mind has finished the thought. You leave the dishes on the counter. You leave the bread on the table. Fresh bread, baked this morning, because Saturday is baking day, and you bake this morning the same as every Saturday. You leave your winter coat in the wardrobe because it is April, and you will be back in 3 days. You will not be back in 3 days. You will not be back. But you do not know this yet. You know 3 days. 3 days is what they said.
This is a story about a Saturday morning. Not the explosion. That was Friday night after midnight while most of Pripyat was asleep. Not the first hours of the crisis, which belonged to the operators and the firefighters and the plant officials who arrived in the dark and tried to understand what had happened. Saturday morning is when it became the city's problem. Saturday morning is when 49,000 people woke up to a day that felt almost normal and discovered that it was not. Pripyat was a young city, built in 1970 specifically to house the workers of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant and their families. It was 16 years old in April 1986. Its average resident was 26 years old. It had schools and hospitals and a sports complex and a cultural center and a swimming pool. It had a park and a river and apartment blocks arranged in the Soviet style, practical and regular, designed to house a working population in comfort. It was, by the standards of Soviet cities, a good place to live. The plant paid well. The shops were stocked. There was a sense of purpose, of being part of something modern and important. On the morning of April 27th, it looked like itself. The streets looked like streets. The apartment windows were lit or dark in the ordinary patterns of a Saturday morning. Some people already up, some still sleeping. Children were outside. There was a smell of bread from one window, coffee from another, and then the loudspeakers. Her name was Oksana. She was 29 years old. Her husband, Mykola, worked maintenance at the plant and had not come home from Friday night's shift. She had called the plant several times and received reassuring answers that reassured her less with each call. Her daughter, Daria, was 4. It was Saturday. There was bread on the table. And then the loudspeakers said, 3 days. In this story, you are Oksana. The suitcase is open on the bed. The loudspeaker has just finished. Your daughter is in the next room. You have 3 days' worth of time to decide what to take from a life you are about to leave. The morning started the way Saturday mornings start. Daria woke you at 7, which was earlier than you wanted, and exactly when you expected. Because Daria wakes at 7 every day regardless of what day it is, her internal clock indifferent to the concept of sleeping in. She came into the bedroom and stood beside the bed and said "Mama" in the way she says it when she wants you to know she is awake and does not intend to be awake alone. You got up. You made tea. You sliced bread. You put out butter and the jar of cherry jam that Mykola's mother sent from the village last autumn. The good kind. The kind that tastes of actual cherries rather than sugar with cherry coloring. Daria ate her bread with the focused attention of a 4-year-old at breakfast, the bear beside her plate, the bear present at every meal as a matter of established custom. The morning was ordinary, except that Mykola had not come home. This was not unprecedented. Night shifts ran long sometimes. Equipment problems, handover delays. You had called the plant at 8, and a woman had said he was fine. Everything was fine. There had been an incident, but it was under control. He would be home soon. You asked what kind of incident. She said a small fire. She said it in the tone of someone reading from a script, the tone of someone who has been told what to say and is saying it. You did not believe the tone. But you did not know what to do with not believing it. You had no information. You had a tone of voice and a 4-year-old eating jam bread and a Saturday stretching in front of you. So you did what you do when you have no information and a day to get through. You moved through the morning. You washed up. You put on the laundry. You thought about what to make for lunch. Then the street changed. Not suddenly. Gradually. The number of official vehicles. The militia cars that had not been there at 7 and were there at 9, parked at intervals along the main road. Men in uniforms talking in small groups near the building entrances. Neighbors at their windows. An atmosphere that was not panic but was adjacent to panic, the specific quality of a community that senses something and is waiting for confirmation. You went to the window. You looked at the street. You went to get the suitcase. You went to get the suitcase before the loudspeaker. This is the thing that will stay with you. You did not wait for the announcement. Something in the morning. The cars, the uniforms, the quality of the light or the air or the silence where there should have been normal Saturday sounds. Something told you and you went to get the suitcase from the top of the wardrobe before anyone official told you to pack. Your body knew before the announcement. Your body has been knowing since you called the plant at 8 o'clock and heard the tone of the woman on the phone. 3 days. You stand at the open suitcase and you apply this phrase to the objects in your apartment and you understand immediately that 3 days is not enough information. 3 days where? 3 days in what weather? 3 days with access to what facilities? Will you be in a school gymnasium on cots? Will you be with relatives? Will there be washing machines? Will there be shops? You do not know the answers. You pack for uncertainty, for Daria. 4 changes of clothes because 4-year-olds need more changes of clothes than 3 days would suggest. Pajamas, her medicine, the cough syrup she needed last month and that you kept in the cabinet in case. Her boots because it rained yesterday and the ground will be wet. The bear. The bear goes in first, before the clothes, because the bear is not negotiable. And the bear being packed needs to be confirmed before anything else is added. For yourself, less than you would like, because the space left after Daria's things is limited. 2 changes of clothes. The good coat, the spring one, not the winter one. Your documents, your passport. Daria's birth certificate, the savings book with the account number and balance that represents everything you and Mikola have put away over 6 years of careful living. The photographs. There is a shelf in the hallway where the photographs live. Your wedding photograph in its frame. The photograph of Daria as a newborn that Mikola took in the hospital. The one where she is red and furious, and the most beautiful thing you have ever seen. Your parents at their dacha in summer. Mikola's parents at their anniversary dinner last year. You take them all out of their frames. The frames are too heavy for what remains of the suitcase space. You take the photographs themselves, the paper, and you slide them between the clothes where they will not bend. The frames you leave on the shelf. The shelf with the empty frames will be one of the images that photographers document in the abandoned apartments in the years that follow. The frames standing empty on the shelves, the photographs gone because someone took the photographs and left the frames. You close the suitcase. You look around the apartment. The bread is on the table. You baked it this morning. You do this every Saturday. Have done it every Saturday since you and Mikola moved into this apartment after the wedding. Because Mikola's mother baked on Saturdays, and the smell of bread baking on a Saturday is the smell of home to him. You cannot take the bread. The bread does not fit in the concept of 3 days. 3 days does not require bread of your own because in 3 days you will be back in your kitchen, baking the next Saturday's bread. You leave the bread on the table. You will think about the bread for years, not dramatically, just sometimes. The bread on the table that nobody ate. Daria is in the living room when you come back with the suitcase.
She's sitting on the floor with her second bear, the smaller one, the backup bear, having a conversation with it in the specific, serious murmur of a child engaged in imaginative play, a conversation with its own logic and its own rules that you are not permitted to interrupt without good cause. You sit down on the floor beside her. She looks at the suitcase. She looks at you. 4-year-olds are better at reading faces than adults expect. She has been reading yours since she was born. She knows when something is different. She says, "Are we going somewhere?" You say, "Yes." "For a little holiday." She says, "Where?" You say, "Somewhere nice, to see some people." She says, "Is Papa coming?" You say, "Papa will meet us there." This is not a lie exactly. You believe it as you say it. You believe that Mikola will find out where you have gone and will come. You believe in the mechanics of families finding each other, the specific reliability of people who know each other well enough to know where to look. You believe that 3 days is 3 days, and that at the end of 3 days everyone will be back in this apartment and the bread plate will be washed, and Mikola will tell you what happened at the plant, and you will listen with the particular listening of a person who understands only some of what they are hearing but trusts the person telling it. Daria says, "Can I bring the small bear too?" You say, "Yes." She picks up the small bear and holds it against her chest with the large bear and looks at you with an expression of complete trust. The trust is the hardest part. She trusts you entirely. She has never had a reason not to. You have always been the person who knew what was happening and what to do about it. You have always been the reliable one, and right now you do not know what is happening. You do not know what to do about it. But she does not know that you do not know. She sees your face, and your face is saying, "We are fine. We are going somewhere. This is a holiday. Bring the bears." You take her hand. You go down to the street. In the stairwell, you pass your neighbor, Helena. She is 63, lives alone since her husband died, has known you since you moved in, and has strong opinions about how you raised Daria, and expresses them regularly and with love. She's standing in her doorway with a small bag. Not a suitcase. A bag, the kind you take to the market. She's wearing her good dress. You do not know why she's wearing her good dress to evacuate. Maybe she does not know either. Maybe she put on her good dress because the occasion seemed to require it, or because she was not sure she would be back for it. You say, "Helena, come down with us." She says, "I am coming." She is not afraid. Or she is afraid and she is wearing the good dress. So the fear has somewhere to put itself. Daria is in the living room when you come back with the suitcase. She is sitting on the floor with her second bear, the smaller one, the backup bear, having a conversation with it in the specific, serious murmur of a child engaged in imaginative play, a conversation with its own logic and its own rules that you are not permitted to interrupt without good cause. You sit down on the floor beside her. She looks at the suitcase. She looks at you. 4-year-olds are better at reading faces than adults expect. She has been reading yours since she was born. She knows when something is different. She says, "Are we going somewhere?" You say, "Yes, for a little holiday." She says, "Where?" You say, "Somewhere nice, to see some people." She says, "Is Papa coming?" You say, "Papa will meet us there." This is not a lie exactly. You believe it as you say it. You believe that Mikola will find out where you have gone and will come. You believe in the mechanics of families finding each other, the specific reliability of people who know each other well enough to know where to look. You believe that 3 days is 3 days and that at the end of 3 days everyone will be back in this apartment and the bread plate will be washed and Mikola will tell you what happened at the plant and you will listen with the particular listening of a person who understands only some of what they are hearing but trusts the person telling it. Daria says, "Can I bring the small bear too?" You say, "Yes." She picks up the small bear and holds it against her chest with the large bear and looks at you with an expression of complete trust. The trust is the hardest part. She trusts you entirely. She has never had a reason not to. You have always been the person who knew what was happening and what to do about it. You have always been the reliable one, and right now you do not know what is happening. You do not know what to do about it, but she does not know that you do not know. She sees your face, and your face is saying, We are fine. We are going somewhere. This is a holiday. Bring the bears. You take her hand. You go down to the street. In the stairwell, you pass your neighbor, Helena. She's 63. Lives alone since her husband died, has known you since you moved in, and has strong opinions about how you raised Daria, and expresses them regularly and with love. She is standing in her doorway with a small bag. Not a suitcase, a bag, the kind you take to the market. She's wearing her good dress. You do not know why she's wearing her good dress to evacuate. Maybe she does not know either. Maybe she put on her good dress because the occasion seemed to require it, or because she was not sure she would be back for it. You say, "Helena, come down with us." She says, "I am coming." She is not afraid. Or she is afraid and she is wearing the good dress, so the fear has somewhere to put itself. The street is full. Everyone is coming out at the same time. The announcement was city-wide, the loudspeakers on every corner, and the result is this. Every door, in every building opening at approximately the same moment. Every family coming down its stairwell with its bags and its children and its specific combination of things it decided to take for 3 days. The street looks like a photograph of itself. You have walked this street hundreds of times. You know it in every season. You know the bakery smell from the ground floor shop and the specific creak of the third step on the left stairwell of Building 11 and the way the light falls on the apartment block across from yours in the late afternoon. You know this street. Today, it looks familiar and completely wrong. The wrongness is in the crowd, in the suitcases, in the way people are moving, purposeful but uncertain, knowing the direction without knowing the destination. In the sounds, children asking questions that adults are answering in the specific way of adults, who are managing their own fear while managing someone else's. In the militia officers, directing people toward the bus collection points, their voices calm and their eyes busy, and in what is missing. The normal Saturday sounds are missing, the sound of a football being kicked in the courtyard, the sound of a television through an open window, the ordinary suburban noise of a day off, the sound of people doing nothing in particular because they have the freedom to do nothing in particular. These sounds are gone, replaced by the sound of an organized departure. Daria holds your hand. She is watching everything. She is taking it in with the comprehensive observation of a child for whom the world is still full of things that are new and require examination. She does not appear frightened. She appears interested. This is one of the things about 4. The world has not yet told you which things are supposed to be frightening and which are supposed to be interesting, so you apply your own categorization, and apparently, a city full of people with suitcases going to buses on a Saturday morning falls into the category of interesting. You go to the bus. The bus is there. Many buses. The city organized them overnight, apparently. The logistics of evacuating 50,000 people, arranged while most of those people were sleeping. This is something you think about later, in the weeks after, that the buses were already there, that the decision was already made, that someone knew before the announcement that the announcement would be necessary. You look back at the building before you get on the bus. The windows of your apartment are on the 4th floor, facing the street. The window of the living room, where Daria was playing with the bear 20 minutes ago, is dark. You left the living room light off because it was morning and there was enough daylight. The window is a dark square in the facade of the building. Ordinary, unremarkable. One dark window among dozens of windows, some dark and some lit. The building looking exactly as it always looks on a Saturday morning. You look at it for a moment. You turn and get on the bus. The bus fills quickly. You find a seat near the window. Daria sits on your lap because the seat beside you has been taken by an older man with a large case, and there is not room for both the case and Daria. The older man says nothing. He is looking at his hands. You look out the window. The people around you are talking. The bus has the sound of a place where everyone is asking the same questions in different combinations. What happened? Where are we going? How long? Will we come back? The questions circle the bus and arrive back at their starting points without answers because nobody on the bus has the answers. Some people have heard things. A neighbor who heard something from a cousin at the plant. An official-sounding version from a man in a suit who was standing near the bus stop.
The things people have heard contradict each other. The man at the bus stop said it was a small fire, completely under control, precautionary evacuation only. The neighbor said her cousin said the reactor exploded. The explosion version and the small fire version cannot both be true. You know which version Mykola's absence supports. You do not say this. A woman across the aisle has an infant. The infant is asleep, which is the specific impressive sleep of a very young baby who can sleep through anything. The complete unconsciousness of someone whose nervous system has not yet learned to find the world alarming. You watch the baby for a moment. The baby's face is soft and open and entirely trusting of whatever comes next. Daria has found the woman's toddler, who is awake and peering over his mother's arm at Daria, with the interested hostility of a 2-year-old encountering another child. They stare at each other. Daria holds up the large bear. The toddler looks at the bear. Some negotiation occurs that you are not fully following. Daria allows the toddler to touch the bear's ear, which is a significant concession. The bus starts moving. You watch Pripyat from the window as the bus pulls out. The streets are still full. Other buses, other families. The organized departure of a city that has been told 3 days and is complying with 3 days, and is filling the buses in orderly fashion. Because this is what people do when the authorities organize something orderly. They participate in the organization. They trust that the organization knows something they do not. They let the organization carry them toward whatever is next. The city gets smaller. Then the city is behind the trees. Then there is only the road and the Ukrainian countryside in April, green and ordinary. The fields doing what fields do in spring. The light doing what light does in the afternoon. Everything outside the bus window exactly as it always is. Helena is on the bus. You did not notice her board, but she's 2 rows behind you. She's sitting very straight in her seat, with her market bag on her lap and her good dress smoothed over her knees. She's looking out the window at the passing countryside with an expression that you cannot quite read from this angle. You think about what she left in her apartment, what a 63-year-old woman who has lived alone since her husband died packs for 3 days. Whether she packed for 3 days or for something longer. Whether she knows things you do not know, whether the good dress was for the occasion or for a longer goodbye. They take you to a village school, 60 kilometers from Pripyat, a village that was not expecting 50,000 people and is receiving them anyway with the specific heroic pragmatism of Ukrainian villages, which is to say, they open the school, they open the community hall, they bring food, they ask questions later. The school gymnasium has cots. The cots are military issue, the fold-up kind, and they have been set up in rows with a narrow aisle between them and a folded blanket on each one. You find 2 adjacent cots, and you put your suitcase under one and Daria's bag under the other, and you sit on the edge of the cot, and you look at the gymnasium. It is full of Pripyat. You recognize people. The family from your building's 5th floor. The woman from the bread shop whose name you do not know but whose face you know very well because you have bought bread from her twice a week for 3 years. 2 men who you think work at the plant, though you are not certain. Children from Daria's kindergarten, 2 of them, which delights Daria to an extent that the situation does not entirely support, but which you encourage anyway because delight is useful right now. Someone has set up a table with tea. You get tea. You get tea for Daria, weak and sweet the way she likes it. You sit back on the cot, and you drink the tea, and you think about Mykola. You have called the plant 3 times since arriving. The first call connected, and the woman on the other end said he was being attended to and he was fine, and she would pass on the message that you had called. The second call did not connect. The third call connected to a different woman who had no information but took your name and location. Fine, she said fine. You hold on to fine. At 9 in the evening, a man comes to the gymnasium with a list. He reads names from the list, and for each name he gives a location. This is where people are. Which hospital, which facility, which town. You listen to the names. Some of the women around you hear their husband's name and get up immediately to find transportation. Some hear nothing and sit back down. Some cry quietly. The man reads efficiently, without inflection, the specific neutrality of someone delivering a list and not its content. He does not read Mykola's name. You go to him after and give him Mykola's name, and he writes it down and says he will check. He comes back 20 minutes later. He says, "Your husband has been transferred to a hospital in Kiev." He says the name of the hospital. He says nothing else. You arrange for Daria to stay with a woman from your building who has her own children and who offers, without being asked, the offer of someone who has children and understands what it means to need to go somewhere without them. You take the first bus to Kiev in the morning. The hospital is large and Soviet, and the corridors smell of floor polish and something underneath the floor polish that is more chemical. You ask for Mykola at the desk. The woman at the desk finds his name in a book and makes a call, and a doctor comes. The doctor is young and tired and sits you down in a small room off the corridor. He tells you what he knows. He tells you that Mykola received a significant radiation dose during the hours following the accident. He tells you that Mykola is stable. He tells you that stable means something specific in this context, and then he explains what it means. You listen. You are very good at listening. Mykola always said this about you. He said, "You are the kind of person who actually hears what you are told." Not everyone does. You hear what is in the words and also what is between the words. You hear what is between the doctor's words. You say, "Can I see him?" The doctor says yes. He says there are precautions. He says visiting time is limited. He says things that are true and that he is saying kindly and that do not change what is between them. You say, "I understand. Can I see him now?" The doctor takes you to the room. Mykola is in the bed. He looks like himself and not like himself simultaneously. This is the specific experience of seeing a person who is ill. The familiar face on top of something unfamiliar. The known person inside an unknown condition. He looks smaller. This is the word that comes to you. Not actually smaller. Contained. As if the person you know is still all there but held more carefully than usual. He opens his eyes. He says, "You brought Daria." You say, "She is at the village. She is with Natalia from upstairs." He says, "Is she okay?" You say, "She is fine. She has both bears." He almost smiles. You sit down beside the bed and you take his hand, and his hand is warm, and the warmth of it is the most real thing in the room. He asks about the apartment. He asks this on the second day, when he is more awake, when the immediate shock of the first day has passed into something that still requires all of his energy but leaves a small margin for other things. He asks, "Did you close the windows?" And you realize that you do not know. You packed the suitcase and took Daria and got on the bus, and you do not remember if you closed the windows. You say, "I think so." He says, "The plants will need water." He says this about the plants on the windowsill, the ones he tends with more consistency than you do, the ones that have been on that windowsill since you moved in. You say, "The plants will be fine." You both know the plants will not be fine. You say it anyway. 3 days becomes a week becomes 2. At the end of the second week, someone from the village council comes to the school gymnasium and explains that the evacuation has been extended. The word they use is extended, not permanent, extended. The 30-kilometer exclusion zone around the plant means that Pripyat is inside the zone and will remain evacuated for the foreseeable future. Foreseeable future is the phrase. It implies something that can be foreseen, but that the speaker declines to specify. You understand foreseeable future. The women in the gymnasium understand foreseeable future. You can see it in the way they receive the announcement. A stilling, a specific quality of accepting information that was expected, a rearrangement of what was being waited for. Daria has made friends with the 2 children from her kindergarten. They have developed a complicated game involving the bears and some sticks and a set of rules that they understand and that you do not. This is the resilience of 4-year-olds, which is not insensitivity, but a different relationship with time. The present is very large for a 4-year-old, and the present contains the gymnasium and the friends and the game, and the past apartment is receding at the speed at which pasts recede for children, which is faster than for adults. You call Mykola every day. Some days he sounds stronger. Some days his voice is different.
On the days when his voice is different, you hold the phone very still and you listen very carefully and you say, "I will come tomorrow." He says, "You do not need to come every day." You say, "I want to come." He does not argue. He knows, as you know, that there is nothing to argue about. The bread at the gymnasium is fine. It is not your bread. It does not smell like Saturday. But it is fine. You eat it, and you drink the tea, and you watch Daria play her complicated game, and you wait for foreseeable future to become something more specific. A woman in the gymnasium has a radio. In the evenings, she turns it on and the women gather and they listen to what the state radio says about Chernobyl, which is a version of events that is carefully assembled to be technically accurate and practically insufficient. The women listen. They compare what the radio says with what they know from their own husbands and fathers and brothers who were at the plant. The comparison is not reassuring, but the listening is something to do, and in the listening there is a small comfort that has nothing to do with the content. The radio is broadcasting, which means the world outside the gymnasium is continuing, which means the situation has not become worse than it already is, which is a low bar but still a bar. A note of history. Pripyat was a city of 49,360 residents at the time of the Chernobyl disaster. It was founded in 1970 as a purpose-built city for workers at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant and their families. Its average resident age was 26. Making it one of the youngest cities in the Soviet Union. It had 15 primary schools, 5 secondary schools, a hospital, a sports complex with a swimming pool, a cinema, and an amusement park that was scheduled to open for May Day celebrations on May 1, 1986. The evacuation of Pripyat began at 2 p.m. on April 27, 1986, approximately 36 hours after the explosion. The delay was deliberate. Soviet authorities were reluctant to alarm the population and hoped to manage the situation without evacuation. When the evacuation was finally ordered, it was announced as temporary. Residents were told to take documents, necessary items, and food for 3 days. Most people packed accordingly. Approximately 1,200 buses were used to evacuate the city. The evacuation took approximately 3 hours and was, by the standards of emergency evacuations, remarkably orderly. People complied with the instruction. They got on the buses. The city was emptied in an afternoon. The residents of Pripyat never returned. The city remains inside the 30-kilometer exclusion zone. The apartments are still there, still containing the possessions of the people who left for 3 days. Furniture, clothing, books, dishes, toys, photographs still in frames on shelves. The things that people did not take, because they thought they would be back in 3 days. Slavutik was built beginning in 1986 to house the displaced residents of Pripyat and other affected settlements, as well as workers who continued to operate the undamaged reactors at the Chernobyl plant. It is located 45 kilometers from the plant. Construction was rapid and the city was largely completed by 1988. It remains an inhabited city today, with a population of approximately 25,000 people. The Chernobyl plant continued to operate for 14 years after the disaster. Reactors 1, 2, and 3 were restarted after safety checks. Reactor 2 was shut down after a fire in 1991. Reactor 1 was shut down in 1996 as a condition of international financial assistance. Reactor 3, the one whose roof the liquidators cleaned, was shut down on December 15, 2000. The last shift at Chernobyl ended at midnight. Workers who had spent their careers at the plant gathered for the shutdown ceremony. Many of them had evacuated their families from Pripyat in 1986 and then returned to work at the plant for years afterward. The amusement park in Pripyat was never opened. The Ferris wheel, bumper cars, and other attractions were installed and ready for the May Day opening that never happened. They remained there, rusting inside the exclusion zone. The amusement park is one of the most photographed locations in the zone and one of the most widely recognized images of the disaster. The bright yellow Ferris wheel in the overgrown park, the visual shorthand for a city frozen at a moment in April 1986. The bread, if left on a table in an abandoned apartment for decades, would have long since decomposed. But the image of it, fresh bread on a table, left behind by someone who expected to be home in 3 days, persists in accounts of the evacuation. It appears in memoirs and testimonies and documentary interviews. The bread that was left, the bread that nobody ate, has become a way of describing what it means to leave a life quickly and without proper farewell. Next, the scientist.